All right, I resurrected this Jeep light, and it was my first project using WLED. So I wanted to walk you through exactly what I did, all the mistakes that I made, because I couldn't really find a good beginner's tutorial on WLED and what it takes to get these LED strips to really work well. So here we go.
So the first thing I obviously had to do was to take the light itself apart and take it off the wall. This was ultimately the easiest part of this whole process because all I had to do was undo a couple of screws and lift it off the wall. Here you see my original Philips Hue light installation. These are a few years old and I don't have the Hue bridge anymore, so I went with this stuff instead. Some LED wires, BTF lighting strips, and this GLED Opto ESP32 WLED controller. Once I had all the old lights removed, you can see here where ultimately I am going to plug in the new LED lights. I had the foresight of installing two outlets on each side of the Jeep grill. The first thing I did was measure out exactly the length of the LED strips that I needed. What I found for my purposes was that 25 LEDs per strip were more than sufficient. So I ultimately decided to cut the strips every 25th LED. And the nice thing about these strips is that they can be cut after each individual LED and reconnected using the provided wires. Or maybe not provided wires, the wires I provided myself, I suppose. So I went through and cut every 25th LED for a total of 150 LEDs that will be lit up. And then I laid everything out on the kitchen counter, making sure that the direction of the lights was appropriate. One went up, the next one went down, then up again, then down again, and so on and so forth. Once I had that done, it was time to reconnect the cut strips using the three wires that I purchased. And this proved to be somewhat challenging because the plastic isn't all the best. But after a few minutes, I finagled my way through it all and had all the LED strips reconnected in the right direction the way I wanted to. Now it was time to hook everything together and power it up. So first, everything went into the ESP32 controller. Again, this is a GLED Opto ESP32 controller with WLED in it. So everything went in the IO16 pin, and then I cut some wires to connect to the power supply. I only had 16 gauge or 18 gauge wire at home. I can't remember for sure, but that's what I ended up using. And that went in the V in and V positive and V negative terminals on the controller. After I hooked everything up, I noticed not all the lights were lighting up, and that's ultimately a major source of frustration throughout this whole process. It took me a long time to figure this out. I checked all the wires to make sure I didn't miss anything, but what I discovered was that these are 5-volt LED strips, and I had a 12-volt power supply that also was only at 1 amp. So I went out and purchased a 5-volt, 5 amp power supply, and voila! Everything lights up the first try. Beautiful. Now I can put the LED strips into the Jeep grill itself where they needed to be, and one goes up, and then one goes down, and then one goes up again, and down again, and so on and so forth throughout the whole Jeep grill. I can spare you most of these details because this is the boring part. Once I had that done, I connected the ESP32 controller with some double-sided tape to the back of the grill. And did the same thing for the power supply to mount it out of the way with some double-sided tape. And then everything else was just wire management to make sure that the wires and cables weren't interfering with the light itself. And here you go. There you see it plugged into the outlet that I had prepared. Now it was time to actually connect to WLED for the first time. So on my computer, I connected to the WLED access point, and automatically this display showed up, which was awesome. Now I knew I had to get into the config setting from previous videos that I saw. I'm not going to do the Wi-Fi setup just yet. I wanted LED preferences. And there's a few things I wanted to change right off the bat. The maximum current I set to 5,000 milliamps because I have a 5 amp power supply. And not much happened yet at this point. I also realized that I had the wrong setting here for my LED power strips. I have SK6812 power strips, LED strips I mean. So I set that up and also changed the color order to RGB. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I went with, and it seems to work. I also have 150 LEDs, so I put that in. And once all of that was set up, I had green lights coming all the way through, so that seemed to already be working just fine. Now I just played around with the effects a little bit to see what I liked. And everything seems to be working pretty smoothly at this point already. So it was important that I had the milliamps, the current limiter set correctly, and I also put in that I have 150 addressable LEDs, which is the exact number of LEDs in my strips. And I just went back and made sure on a solid color that all the light strips lit up, which they did. So I was very happy with the result and how easy it was to get all of this going at this point. I really like this Android effect, and that's what I ultimately went with. So then I only connected it to my home Wi-Fi network so that I ultimately could connect it to my home assistant and control the light through that. I can spare you the details on the Wi-Fi setup. You know, you have to put in your password. And scroll all the way to the bottom to save. Once all of that was done, I also set a static IP on my router, and here we go. The light is fully set up and configured now through my home assistant to turn it on and off, and it was a really easy process.